Hello, I'm Bud McCord. I'm here in Brazil, South America. It's October 5th, 2021. Welcome to Food for Thought. We're walking through the pages of John's Gospel, and we're watching the process of the disciples of Jesus being discipled personally by his presence. We've begun to see very clearly that they were in constant contact with Jesus. They saw him, they heard him, they learned to love him, and then they were sent out in the world to live in the world as he had lived. I hope you're well and already focused on Jesus Christ. We're in John chapter 11, and we're seeing a moment when Jesus' dear friend, Lazarus, dies. And Jesus says that this experience that Lazarus was going through and went through, death, and the mourning and the grieving of his family, was a part of God's plan to teach us all. And it was a horrible moment for all those that were involved, I'm sure. But for us who have to go through this process ourselves, those of us who have to live in this world in which we live, it is an incredible example to us of God's compassion for us as we go through these kind of circumstances. We ended with these words in verse 16 of John chapter 11 yesterday. Then Thomas, who is called the twin, said to the fellow disciples, "Let us go, that we may die with him," because they were going back to Jerusalem. They knew that there were people there who wanted to kill Jesus. And they assumed, some of them assumed, that that would mean that they together with Jesus would die. And the story, the narrative of Jesus' presence in the world would end on that note. But Jesus tells his disciples that Lazarus has died, and then he takes them to see the power of God, because Jesus had said that he had the power to lay down his life and to take up his life. And here in this passage, he manifests that, he shows that to his disciples so that they would know the kind of power that he could use in this world to do what God wanted done. Listen to these verses, verse 17. I read these 3 times since last night, and it is so authentic, it's so real. You have to read this story as though you're a part of the family. As you're there, you're one of the disciples, and then it just jumps off the page at you, I think. So when Jesus came, he found that he, Lazarus, had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away. And many of the Jews had joined the women around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him. But Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Wow, imagine you being able to say what she said. If you had been here, he would have never died. Yet, I still believe that whatever you would ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise in the resurrection at the last day." So she's solid in her thinking. She's solid in her trust in Jesus. She's just hurt. Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." Again, it's hard to even think of anyone more solid than this woman, this disciple of Jesus, and in response to what's going on, but she's still hurt. And when she had said these things, she went her way and secretly called Mary, her sister, saying, "The teacher has come and is calling for you." And as soon as she heard that, she rose quickly and came to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house, comforting her, when they saw that Mary rose up quickly, went out, followed her, saying, "She is going to the tomb to weep there." Then when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in spirit and was troubled. Wow. Think about that. Jesus is God in the flesh, and he is identifying with her pain and her loss and her confusion and her grieving, and he is deeply troubled by this. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" And then they said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" And some of them said, "Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying?" I really believe, after I've read this passage for many, many, many years, but reading it again last night and again this morning early and again this morning early, I'm just so impressed with Jesus' compassion. He cannot alter the reality that his Father has given him in the sense that he is doing the Father's will. But every part of him that is human is identifying with the pain that these people are in. He knows the final outcome. He said that he would rise at the end in the last day. But still, knowing everything that he knew, and knowing everything about what the Father's plan was for him and for Lazarus and for Mary and Martha, he still weeps. He still weeps. There's a lot that we can draw from this. I think if you will read this quietly alone and just ask the Holy Spirit to put you into this picture, you will be able to sense that this is a picture for you. This is a picture for me. This happened so that I would know that when I go through this kind of pain, when you go through this kind of pain, that Jesus also feels what you feel. But he cannot escape, or he doesn't want to escape from doing the will of the Father. And he knows that Mary wants to do the will of the Father. And he knows that Martha wants to do the will of the Father. He knows that Lazarus wants to do the Father. But the limitations we have as human beings can become so overwhelming to us that we grieve. Someone has described grieving as adjusting to a reality that you never wanted. Adjusting to a reality that you never wanted. And the grieving process is very difficult. And the rituals that surrounded Mary and Martha and people coming into their home to weep with them were all a part of the process people go through when they're grieving. And so it just really is it's almost hard to talk about, because it's almost like when you go to a funeral and you just don't know what to say. When I read this, I just don't quite know what to say, except that I can identify with this story as a human being. I can identify with the way Jesus is feeling about this family, but I can also identify with the fact that the problem is much bigger than just the death of Lazarus. It's about life and death for humanity. Oswald Chambers, an author that has greatly influenced me, said this. He said, God orchestrates our circumstances to educate our faith. God orchestrates our circumstances to educate our faith, educate our receptivity, allow us to become more open to God. And sometimes death is one of those educational moments. And I'm not talking about just learning a little lesson. I'm talking about literally the development of our faith. Because when we are faced with the reality that we did not want, and even a reality that we believe that God could have changed, and I think we ought to believe that God can change these realities. But when he doesn't change these realities, we still can fall at the feet of Jesus. We can still say to Jesus, I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe in you. I just want to kind of just share with you that we're in, across the globe in this pandemic, a faith-altering time. We are surrounded by political and social and economic turmoil on every side. It's the same thing here in Brazil. It's the same thing in Portugal. I'll be going to Portugal in 3 weeks. It's the same thing in Portugal. It's across the globe. And there are many, 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 many Christians who are adapting to realities that they never wanted. And I'm sure that all of us have our stories to tell. And I think that we can learn from Martha. I think we can learn from Mary. I think we can obviously learn from Jesus. And I think that we need to come to him, cry at his feet, know that he is God, and still be honest about the hurt that we feel. And to know this, that Jesus groans with us, that he cries with us, but he will go on and do what he must do. And he will go on and continue going on and continue going on. And that same Jesus is using his disciples in this world. And we will keep going in the direction of the pain. We will keep going in the direction of death. There's another verse I leave with you to finish that's always comforted me. It's from the Psalms. It says, precious in the sight of the Lord. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. It's always comforted me the thought that when we die, we're going through the door to the place where we want to be forever. So it's a part of that process. God bless you. Have a great day.